Tonight, a massive federal operation exposes an $85 million smuggling network hidden inside a trusted trucking company.
4:19 a.m., Highway 52, southern Minnesota. The temperature had dropped to 30 below zero, the kind of cold that kills car batteries in minutes and turns exposed skin to ice in seconds. The road stretched out like a black ribbon through white nothing. No traffic, no lights, just the occasional distant glow of a farmhouse fighting against the dark. A state trooper sat in his cruiser, engine running, heat blasted, watching his radar for speeders who would never come. Nobody drives fast in weather like that. Nobody's smart anyway. Then he saw it. A North Star hauling semi-truck easing onto the shoulder about half a mile ahead. Standard procedure during severe cold. Drivers pull over to check their tires, their brakes, their cargo straps. Nothing unusual. But something made the trooper pull up behind it anyway. At instinct. Call it boredom, call it fate. He walked through the cutting wind to the driver's side window. The man behind the wheel was calm, polite, handed over his license and manifest without hesitation. Everything looked clean, until the trooper checked the logs. The weight distribution was wrong. The manifest said the trailer was carrying insulation material, 22,000 pounds, but the axle readings suggested something heavier, something denser, something hidden. The trooper called for backup. Within 40 minutes, a customs inspection team arrived with portable X-ray equipment. What they found behind the false wall of that trailer changed everything. Vacuum-sealed bricks of fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, stacked floor to ceiling in a hidden compartment that ran the entire length of the truck frame. Street value, $12 million. Not in one truck, on one night, on one frozen highway. But here is where the story takes its first dark turn. The driver did not ask for a lawyer. He asked for a deal. And the information he gave federal agents in the next 60 minutes would turn a routine traffic stop into a national security crisis. He was not alone. He was not even special. He was one of 83 drivers, all Somali nationals, all operating inside North Star Hauling, one of the Midwest's most trusted regional carriers. They drove the same branded trucks as legitimate employees. They wore the same uniform. They logged into the same dispatch system, but they followed different rules. While regular drivers changed routes based on weather and fuel costs, these 83 men mixed paths, the same roads, the same stops, the same timing, almost exclusively at night, almost exclusively during winter storms. Federal investigators would later call this the ghost fleet. They were not hiding in unmarked vans on back roads. They were hiding in plain sight, moving alongside legal cargo, using the cover of a legitimate business to mask the movement of narcotics, weapons, and cash. The genius of the operation was its camouflage. To anyone watching, including law enforcement, these trucks looked identical to thousands of others on the road. Same company, same logos, same routes. The only difference was what they carried behind their false walls, and the only way to find them was to drill through steel. 11:42 a.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Laboratory, Chicago Field Office. The servers seized from North Star Hauling arrived in armored transport. Federal analysts worked through the night-breaking encryption layers that would have stopped most hackers cold. By noon, they had access to the company's secondary dispatch system, not the one that tracked legal freight, the other one. On the main screen, a network diagram began to populate. Red nodes appeared across 5 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, Illinois. Each node represented a fixed route. Each route connected to a transfer point. Each transfer point linked to a financial account that existed only on paper. The operation had a name. The drivers called it Corridor North, but the money trail told a different story. The $85 million that had moved through North Star Hauling over the past 3 years did not stay in America. It flowed outward through a web of shell companies, ghost corporations. I meant informal transfer networks that specialized in moving value without moving physical currency. The destinations were East Africa, the Middle East, accounts that federal investigators had seen before in terrorism financing cases. This was not just drug smuggling. This was infrastructure, a logistics pipeline that connected American highways to criminal operations on 3 continents. And then the analysts found the authorization code. Every major shipment required approval from a single encrypted signature, a digital key that appeared on transfer orders, route changes, and payment authorizations. When they traced that key back through the system, it did not lead to a cartel boss in Somalia. It did not lead to a foreign handler. It led to Minneapolis, to a man named Gerald Whitmore, a deputy director of the Minnesota Regional Transportation Authority. Let me be clear about what investigators found. Gerald Whitmore was not some mid-level bureaucrat who took bribes to look the other way. He was the architect. His office had oversight of commercial trucking permits, weigh station schedules, and inspection protocols across the entire region. For 3 years, he had used that position to create a protected corridor for the Ghost Fleet. Weigh stations were mysteriously closed for maintenance when Carter North shipments passed through. Inspection schedules were altered to avoid routes used by the 83 drivers. Permit applications for North Star hauling moved through approval in half the normal time. The evidence showed that Whitmore received over $2.3 million in payments routed through a fake consulting firm registered in Delaware. He owned properties in 3 states under shell company names. His personal accounts showed deposits that did not match his government salary by a factor of 10. This was not corruption. This was command-level collusion. A public official had turned Minnesota's transportation infrastructure into a protected smuggling corridor, and he had done it so cleanly that no one noticed for years. Federal prosecutors added new charges to the indictment: conspiracy, racketeering, material support for criminal enterprises. But the agents on the ground knew the truth. The scope of this operation extended far beyond one man and 83 drivers. The operation was named Northern Breaker. At 1:47 a.m., 3 days after the Highway 52 stop, federal commanders gathered in a secure operations center outside Chicago. On the wall-mounted screens, a digital map showed the position of every North Star truck currently on the road. 41 red markers pulsed across 5 states. The plan was simple in concept, but brutal in execution. They would not arrest drivers one by one. They would not raid warehouses sequentially. They would hit everything at once, a simultaneous takedown designed to prevent any warning, any escape, any destruction of evidence. Over 400 federal agents were positioned across the region: FBI tactical teams, DEA strike units, ICE enforcement squad, state police coordinating roadblocks on 17 different highways. The weather forecast called for another winter storm. Perfect conditions for the Ghost Fleet, and perfect conditions for the takedown. At 2 a.m., the command center gave the green light. On Interstate 94, a convoy of 3 North Star trucks pushed through heavy snow toward the Canadian border. The drivers thought the flashing lights behind them were snowplows. They thought the vehicles pulling alongside were fellow truckers. They were wrong. Federal SUVs boxed in the convoy, spike strips deployed ahead. The lead truck's tires blew in sequence, sending the 18-wheeler sliding across the icy shoulder in a shower of sparks and snow. Within 90 seconds, all 3 drivers were face down on the frozen pavement. Within 5 minutes, tactical teams had breached the trailer walls and confirmed the cargo: fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, cash, enough to supply the Twin Cities for months. Simultaneously, the main assault hit North Star Hauling's headquarters in Minneapolis. An armored vehicle crashed through the security gate. Federal teams poured into the loading bay, flashbangs echoing off the concrete walls. Workers dropped to the floor. Computers were seized before anyone could delete a single file. In the dispatch office, agents found the dual system: one screen showing legal freight movements, one screen showing the Ghost Fleet, real-time positions, payment schedules, route authorizations, everything they needed to prove the conspiracy. In Sioux Falls, a repair shop that served as a transfer was surrounded. Inside, investigators found safes containing $4.2 million in cash and ledgers documenting payments to drivers, mechanics, and local officials who had agreed to look the other way. In Chicago, a truck parked at a quiet industrial lot was breached. The driver tried to run. A federal K-9 unit brought him down within 50 yards. Inside his cab, agents found a satellite phone, a handgun, and a map showing drop points that matched no legitimate delivery route. By dawn, the reports were flooding the command center. All 83 drivers detained, 41 trucks impounded, 23 locations secured, over $85 million in assets frozen, more than 12,000 pounds of narcotics seized, including enough fentanyl to kill every person in the state of Minnesota 3 times over. But the operation was not finished. At 6:15 a.m., federal agents arrived at a residence in Edina, Minnesota, a quiet suburban neighborhood, well-maintained lawns, the kind of street where people wave to their neighbors. Then Gerald Whitmore answered the door in his bathrobe. He was placed under arrest without resistance. His home was searched. Investigators found encrypted hard drives hidden in a basement safe. The drives contained 3 years of communications with the Carter North network: authorization codes, payment confirmations, route schedules, everything. They also found something unexpected: a second set of files labeled Phase 2. The documents outlined an expansion plan: new routes through Nebraska and Kansas, new partnerships with trucking companies in Texas and Arizona, new financial channels designed to move even larger sums out of the country. Whitmore had not been content with one protected corridor. He had been building a nationwide smuggling infrastructure and a shadow logistics network that would operate inside America's legal shipping industry for decades. The plan projected annual cash flows exceeding $300 million within 5 years. Federal prosecutors added charges. Whitmore faced life in prison, but the investigation did not stop with the architect. As analysts continued examining the seized servers, they discovered something that made the substance trafficking look almost small. The corruption ran deeper than anyone had imagined. 18 employees of the Minnesota Regional Transportation Authority had received payments from Corridor North accounts. 7 were directly involved in scheduling changes that protected Ghost Fleet routes. 3 had provided advance warning of federal inspection initiatives. 14 local law enforcement officers across 5 states appeared in the payment ledgers. Deputies who patrolled highways used by the network, officers who had responded to calls near transfer points and reported nothing suspicious, sergeants who had access to regional intelligence briefing. 2 county judges in rural Wisconsin had received payments through the same shell company that paid Whitmore. Their courts had handled traffic cases involving North Star drivers. Every case had been dismissed. This was not a trucking conspiracy. This was institutional infiltration. The network had not just moved drugs through the Midwest, it had purchased protection at every level: law enforcement, transportation officials, the judiciary, a shadow system designed to ensure that Corridor North could operate indefinitely. Our honest officers who had worked alongside compromised colleagues felt the betrayal personally. One state trooper who had unknowingly patrolled protected routes told investigators he felt sick. He had trusted these people. He had shared intelligence with them. He had no idea he was feeding information to the enemy. The federal response was immediate. Every compromised officer was suspended. Every complicit official was arrested. Every judge under investigation was removed from the bench pending review. The human cost cannot be measured in dollars. In the 3 years that Corridor North operated, the Midwest experienced a surge in overdose deaths. Fentanyl deaths in Minnesota increased by 43%. Wisconsin saw similar spikes. Iowa, South Dakota, Illinois. And the substances that moved through those hidden truck compartments killed people. Mothers, fathers, children. People who never knew that the white powder destroying their lives had traveled across the country in the same trucks that delivered their grocery. Communities that had trusted their local officials learned that trust had been weaponized against them. Neighborhoods that had relied on law enforcement for protection discovered that some of those officers had been protecting something else entirely. The economic damage radiated outward. North Star Hauling employed hundreds of legitimate workers who had no knowledge of the Ghost Fleet. They lost their jobs when the company was shut down. Supply chains that depended on North Star deliveries were disrupted for weeks. And small businesses that had relied on regular shipments were forced to find alternatives at premium costs. And the psychological damage may be the worst of all, because now people know. They know that the trucks on the highway might not be carrying what they claim. They know that the officials overseeing their roads might not be serving their interests. They know that systems they trusted could be turned against them without their knowledge. That knowledge does not go away. So what do we learn from this? Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it moves quietly. Sometimes it files permits and adjusts schedules. Sometimes it hires drivers and builds false walls. Sometimes it corrupts one official at a time until the entire system serves a different master. Gerald Whitmore did not carry a gun. He carried a pen. He signed documents. He approved permits. He adjusted inspection schedule. And through those mundane bureaucratic actions, he enabled an $85 million criminal enterprise that moved poison across American highways and funded operations on multiple continents. The 83 drivers were the hands of the network. Whitmore was its brain. But the real lesson is that both need each other. The physical infrastructure of trucks and routes meant nothing without the institutional protection that Whitmore provided. And Whitmore's corrupt influence meant nothing without the logistics system that made the money worth protecting. They built a machine that turned winter storms into strategic advantages, a machine that turned legitimate business into cover for crime, a machine that turned public trust into private profit. And it took a single traffic stop on a frozen highway to bring it down. Federal officials described Northern Breaker as the most significant trucking enforcement action in 30 years. The 83 drivers face charges ranging from drug trafficking to conspiracy to money laundering. Gerald Whitmore faces life imprisonment. The compromised officers and officials face their own reckoning. But investigators know the truth. Networks like Corridor North do not appear in isolation. They emerge because vulnerabilities exist, because systems can be corrupted, because oversight can be purchased. The question is not whether there are other ghost fleets on American roads. The question is how many. This story is fiction. The names are invented. The events are dramatized. But the vulnerabilities it describes are real. The methods are real. The potential for institutional corruption is real. If you made it this far, you understand something important. You understand that the greatest threats to a society do not always come from outside. Sometimes they emerge from within. Sometimes they wear badges. Sometimes they hold offices. Sometimes they drive trucks that look exactly like every other truck on the road. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember that silence is not neutrality. Silence is permission. If this story resonated with you, share it. Comment below. Let others know what you learned, because stories like this only matter if people hear them. And there are always more stories to tell.